Under 2 weeks to go until the Victorian state election on November 26, for the Liberal leader Matthew Guy, its second attempt at defeating Daniel Andrews after falling short in 2018 for the first time in the campaign. Matthew Guy sat down for this exclusive with Sky's Julia Bradley.
Matthew Guy, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks, Julia.
You failed as an opposition leader to get your party into government previously. What will be different this time around?
Well, I'm not the first one who's done that. Mark McGowan was one of those. John Howard was another one of those. There's lots of those in Australian history. But what I am making sure is that Victorians know where the Liberal Party stands at this election. We are going to fix the health system. We're going to make sure cost of living pressures are eased as much as they can by the state. And we are going to give this state a fresh start that it needs. And by God, it needs it.
You've criticised the Premier's handling of COVID. What would you have done differently if you were Premier at that time?
I would have brought in the Australian Defence Force rather than leave hotel quarantine to private security, who to this day we still don't know who ordered those contracts. I mean, this is where the Premier says he can't recall, 3 dozen times. We would have brought in the Australian Defence Force. We would have partnered with other states to make sure our laws were in keeping and were in partnership with other states so that there weren't many rules that were differing.
And on lockdowns?
Well, we've said plenty of times that the lockdowns we had in this state certainly went on for too long and they were unexplained. We had playgrounds closed, rings of steel, we had people limited to 5 kilometres in their work, we had businesses shut, and none of this with health advice that was made public. But I want Victorians to move on from that. And I want them to know that the state government I lead is ready to move on with that.
On policy making, there have been a few times when the heads of, say, the nurses or the ambulance union have said that you haven't consulted with them on your plans for the health system before making announcements. Why is that?
Why would I consult a union? The union movement is the trade union entity of the Australian Labor Party. If the unions think I should consult them, I mean, they might ask Daniel Andrews, does he consult the Institute for Public Affairs when he goes to economic policy? Of course he doesn't. So why would I consult a union? The unions are, as you'd expect, the trade union organised element of the Australian Labor Party. They're paid up members of the Australian Labor Party. If there's somehow the unions are upset I don't consult them on policy, phooey for them, get used to it.
How much money is there to be saved from shelving the suburban rail loop?
Well, this is an interesting question because the Labor government still won't tell us how much it costs. What we can see is that there's $11.5 billion from a state contribution, and that's ×2 from the feds and ×3 if you look at value uplift that the government said it will cost. But what we do know is it's going to cost a lot more than that. And of course the state government won't tell you that before the state election because they're committing a huge amount of money, a ridiculous amount of money, to one project. I'll reprioritise that money, put it where it needs to go, every cent, and that money will go to rebuilding our health service in Victoria.
If you don't know how much exactly you'll save from shelving the suburban rail, how do you know for sure you'll be able to fund all of your health promises?
Well, I can tell you straight out, it's less than $11.5 billion, and that's what the state government have allocated in through forward estimates. And my commitments are only but more than half of that. So we will save certainly a large amount of money, but I intend to put every cent, as I've said, back into rebuilding the health system in Victoria, and I'll do that.
What is your plan to tackle Victoria's record debt?
Well, we've got a debt cap proposal because we need to first of all ascertain how big the debt is. And we can't actually work that out until the government releases documentation to do that. They won't. So therefore, should we come to government, we'll make sure that there's actually a cap on debt in Victoria, which is what this state needs. I mean, I think we've got potentially more than $200 billion of government debt in Victoria. It's more than New South Wales, Queensland and Tasmania combined. And that needs to be capped, and that's the first thing we'll be doing coming into government.
As the party of business, what are your policies to provide relief to taxpayers in terms of land tax and payroll tax?
Well, land tax we haven't made any announcements on. Payroll tax we certainly have. And our changes to payroll tax by increasing the threshold will make Victoria the best payroll tax for business regime in Australia, as opposed to the worst, what it is now, the worst. We'll make it the best because Victorian business needs that start. They need that fresh start. They need a government that believes in them, that actually supports people who make a profit from business and don't demonise them like the current government does. We'll do that because that creates jobs, and payroll tax is a tax on jobs.
Will you step down as opposition leader if you lose the election?
Let's get to the 27th of November first. There's 2.5 weeks to go in that, and let's just get there first.
You must have thought about it.
Oh, well, let's just get there first.
Do you have any regrets about how you handled the Tim Smith situation?
No, those things are in the past. I don't look to the past, I look to the future. You know, you can look back in life and have lots of regrets about lots of things, but you can't change them. What you can do is move forward, and that's what I want to do.
Thank you.
Thank you.